All right, we've got it going on. Lauren, you're here. That is good. It is good to see Lauren. Some people have started, it's very cute. Some people have started adding me on LinkedIn. I appreciate that. That feels good to kind of see some of your faces on LinkedIn. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Tam, and feel free to say hi to me on Instagram. You can also connect with Danielle on her Instagram. We're happy to be connected. All right. So welcome to this presentation of Beyond Addiction, the world's first online conference focused on plant medicine and recovery. I am ever so just grateful and delighted to be able to introduce my very good friend, Danielle Nova, um, coming up on like 10 years of building and growing in the psychedelic space together. Danielle is the executive director of San Francisco Psychedelics Society. She is a microdosing coach. She runs a microdosing facilitator training. She does all manners of good, like social work with um, indigenous people, like the Hunikuan and the Yawanawa. Works on fair trade projects with them and other kinds of support. I know I'm missing a lot because you're a lot in the very best way. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to your conference, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's such a pleasure to collaborate with you on the Beyond Addiction conference. And I'm just so thrilled to be here with all of you today. Thank you so much for coming to my presentation here today. And I just also want to thank my mom. My mom is here, and yeah, this is one of the first times that my mom has been present for one of my events, and I just really appreciate my mom for being here. And I'm going to just do a screen share. And also thank you to Lauren for all of your amazing work and collaboration on the Beyond Addiction Conference. So thank you. Welcome to my presentation today. I am going to be presenting on my personal story of overcoming 15 years of drug addiction through the intentional application of psychedelics and some resources that I learned along the way. And throughout my collaboration with these sacred plants and fungi, I have been able to transform how I view addiction and medication tapering. And I want to share some of that perspective with you all so that we can open our hearts and zoom out and view addiction from a new lens. And also, part of my intention with sharing my story is to inspire other people to know that there's a pathway to heal beyond addiction and medication dependency. I want to start by saying I am so grateful for my addiction because it brought me here and it brought me to my purpose on this planet. And I'm so grateful for my suffering. I truly believe that our suffering is our greatest teacher and our greatest gift. And just a quick disclaimer, none of this information is medical advice or prescription, and not to be replaced for any type of, medication tape. I'm not telling anyone to taper off medications. I'm just sharing my personal story and what worked for me. So Daniel shared a bit more about my experience, but just at a very high level of my background, I am the founder of Lumeria, which is a new company that I just formed, and I've provided a program called the Microdosing Facilitator Training for the past year, where I've trained over 100 clinicians and practitioners how to guide their clients through microdosing protocols. A big part of this program is teaching practitioners how to integrate microdosing as a tool for addiction recovery and medication tapering. I've also worked as the executive director of San Francisco Psychedelics Society, which for almost a decade, which is the first and largest psychedelic society in the United States, where I've created educational programs and integration spaces for over 25,000 people worldwide. I am personally mentored by one of my best friends, Dr. James Fadiman. He is the inventor of modern microdosing protocols. And I feel that I steward his lineage of, really introducing microdosing into the modern world. And he guides all of the work that I do. And I'm so grateful for Dr. James Fadiman. I'm also the founder of Psychedelic Recovery, which I'll share a bit more about later, but it's a peer support group and integration space, over 5,000 people have come through our program. It's a harm reduction group, a non-12-step group, where we basically provide integration spaces and education for people that are either interrupting addiction with psychedelics or using them for long-term recovery. And I'm not going to be going over the science today. We have so many researchers that are going to be sharing about their work in this conference, but just at a high level, just to paint the landscape, psychedelics are resurging into the public consciousness. There's dozens of research studies happening at top tier universities around the world. And there's a lot of efficacy and a lot of healing that people are receiving from psychedelics. So this was a study that was done with psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in psilocybin containing mushrooms. They use synthetic psilocybin, and it helped the participants reduce their drinking. 5-MeO-DMT is also being studied right now as a candidate for alcohol addiction. And 5-MeO-DMT is a synthetic compound that comes from toad venom. And we're going to have a lot of amazing presentations about iboga and ibogaine, but it's really one of the gold standard treatments for helping individuals interrupt addiction, and particularly effective for opioid addiction. So I struggled with addiction for over 15 years. And this is a photo of me on the left, deep in my drug addiction. And this is me on the right after after many years of healing myself with the intentional application of psychedelics. I'm going to go into a bit of my story and then share a video with you of me deep in my withdrawal process. So I suffered addiction to Oxycontin, fentanyl. I got addicted to Opana. I dabbled in heroin. That was for 6 years, and I was just heavily, heavily addicted to opioids. And then I went on Subutex and Suboxone for several years to try to get off of the opioids. In high school, I also suffered with addiction to cocaine. I dabbled in methamphetamine. I really started using drugs when I was 11 years old. And I just always wanted to run away from myself. Drugs were my go-to. They were my safety blanket. That's where I found connection and love. When I was 15 years old, I was prescribed medications. I suffered a lot of trauma in high school, and I was really acting out in all different types of ways. That's actually when I started using MDMA and mushrooms when I was in high school, and my mood became so unstable. I didn't know how to process the trauma that I went through, and I went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist first put me on anti-anxiety medication, and then antidepressants, and then mood stabilizers, and ADHD medication, and sleeping pills. By the time I graduated high school, I was on like 5 or 6 medications. I spent I went to 8 different rehabs throughout my 20s where I was prescribed hundreds of psychiatric medications from benzodiazepines, mood stabilizers, antidepressants. I kept going on new medications because the medications weren't working. I was also extremely addicted to tobacco. I smoked a pack a day for 12 years and addicted to cannabis. And I was prescribed more drugs in the rehab centers than outside of the rehab centers. I remember going to rehab to get off of opioids, and I left that treatment center on 20 different medications. And I share my history not to, I'm not going to focus on all these drugs, but I share this just to show you of, my story is actually not unique. There's so many people that have a similar drug history that I do, but I am unique in the fact that I use psychedelics to overcome all of these addictions. So I went to rehab 8 different times. I was continuously relapsing, and I was able to get off of all of the street drugs, but I was still very, very addicted to these psychiatric medications. I was on 8 different psychiatric medications. And finally, I went to my doctor and said, I'm suicidally depressed. I was suicidally depressed every single day, wanted to die. And I was taking all these drugs to feel better. And they said, we don't have any more drugs to give you. Why don't you drink more coffee or smoke more cigarettes? And it was at that moment where I had outsourced my power to the rehabs, to the doctors, to the therapists for my whole life. And I was an adult. I had never experienced what life was like as an adult off of, taking handfuls of pills every day just to function. So I decided to come off of all these psychiatric drugs, and it was honestly 100 times harder to get off of than opioids or heroin. And I suffered debilitating withdrawal symptoms for over 18 months. I lost my vision. I had a brain injury. I lost my ability to talk, walk, function. I was just completely debilitated from getting off of all these psychiatric drugs. And psychedelics helped interrupt this process of addiction for me and put me on a pathway to healing and transformation for the first time. And I'm going to share a story, a little video with you about my process.
I'm sick, depressed. I look terrible. I feel shitty about myself. Don't have any friends. I don't want to live right now. Not giving up. I'm just holding on. Sometimes I just wonder, like, why did I get off all the medicine even though I'm feeling a little bit better? It's just, I never imagined I'd just be sitting by myself all the time. I just don't feel good. Like, mentally, I don't feel good. I don't want to go out. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to make friends. I don't want to face the world right now. It's really awful. Just awful. Almost 11 months clean. Having a hard time talking, thinking, functioning. Sucks. I had a terrible night's sleep. How am I gonna get out of this? I woke up with tremors and shakes. Didn't leave my apartment all day yesterday. Feels like I'm taking steps back. I'm trying to go forward. I love you. You can do this. 1 year off benzos. I'm feeling like I have a brain injury. I'm feeling slow. I just want to be alone a lot. Just sitting here on my phone, trying to read a book. It's not going well. I haven't showered in a few days. Kind of alone all the time. I need affection. Stuck. Thanks for listening. So, day 4 of microdosing psilocybin. I'm starting to get some relief from it, and I'm excited about it. I'm so bad on camera. It's giving me more energy and more awareness. I'm seeing all these angel numbers and I'm feeling protected, and I have a higher state of consciousness. My brain is working better. I'm not as depressed. I'm not as agoraphobic. I'm wanting to be outside. I'm wanting to actually kind of do things a little bit. It's slow and it's subtle. Anyways, I'm feeling better, and it's kind of a miracle. I'm putting in the work though. I'm excited. I'm excited for the future. I don't know what it holds. I'm anxious as usual, but that's gotten a little bit better. My brain is healing from these mushrooms. Thank you, body. Thank you, earth. Thank you, angels, for another day.
Thank you so much for witnessing that process. And it wasn't just microdosing that helped heal my, interrupt and heal addiction, but microdosing was a huge part of that process. And I think it's just really powerful just to see the change of being, deep into that withdrawal process and then how much microdosing and psychedelics helped me. So I'm going to go into um, more of the treatments that I did. So I used ayahuasca, microdosing, psilocybin, and I also microdosed with LSD. I still microdose as a part of my recovery process. I did 2 flood doses of iboga. I worked with 5-MeO-DMT. This was over many, many years that I was working with psychedelics. It really wasn't just one experience. But after my first ayahuasca session, when I was deep in this withdrawal process, I remember ayahuasca said, "I'm going to show you a new way." And I kept diligently working with ayahuasca, and then I started microdosing, doing a lot of integration work, volunteering for the Psychedelics Society. I changed my diet, I changed my lifestyle, started working on my mindset, and it was just a long process of unraveling. One of the only treatments that was effective for my recovery and psychiatric drug withdrawal was microdosing. And, this was back almost a decade ago when no one was talking about psychedelics as a treatment for addiction. And I've now been free of addiction for over 8 years. Traditional avenues did not work for me. I exhausted all resources and medications. I felt truly failed by the medical system and the traditional model. And with psychedelics, I'm provided, it's provided such a transformative path for me. And that's what's inspired me to create this conference for people to learn about these powerful tools, because I don't want so many people to suffer with addiction like I did, or dependency to medications. I want people to know that there's another path that's available for them. Psychedelics also helped me heal my relationship with my family. My dad is actually going to be sharing tomorrow in a presentation about how we worked with ayahuasca together in ceremony. As we know, addiction is a family issue. It impacts families. And my dad and I have been drinking ayahuasca together and healing our relationship and the trauma of the addiction that we went through with ayahuasca. And he's a cancer doctor at Stanford, and really comes from that Western medicine mindset. So it's going to be powerful. I invite you guys to come check out my dad's presentation. And it's the first time that we're sharing publicly about our story, and we really want to inspire other families to know that we can heal as a family unit, especially families that are impacted by addiction. And we need multiple pathways for addiction. So at a high level, there's so many psychedelic tools that have the potential to interrupt addiction, but some of the most common ones that are currently being studied, both at top tier universities, but also a lot of, underground research that's happening with individuals: psilocybin containing mushrooms, LSD, Amanita muscaria. It's important to not mix Amanita muscaria with alcohol. It is a treatment for alcohol and benzo withdrawal because it is more GABAergic. Iboga and ibogaine, wachuma, which is a cactus, also known as San Pedro, ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT, ketamine. When used under proper guidance, ketamine also has the potential to be very habit forming, which we'll go more into in this conference. It's an important subject that we speak about: MDMA and microdosing. So this is just a photo. This was the day that I decided to release my addiction. I took a photo of me breaking all my cigarettes. And I believe this spiritual awakening that I went through was actually the catalyst to my recovery process. A light bulb went off one day and I just woke up spiritually. It was as if spirit or my angels woke me up and really realized that I was just so destructive with my life. This was my pill box. These were the pills that I was taking every single day. That was just a typical day for me, taking handfuls of pills throughout the day just to function. Throughout my work, I worked on the founding team of Decriminalize Nature Oakland, and we passed the first resolution in the United States to deprioritize all entheogenic plants and fungi. This is me at City Council promising City Council that I would roll out educational programs. And the work that we do at this conference and all the work that I do in the psychedelic field is really in alignment with the promises that I made to City Council about, due to us changing the laws there, we think it's important to educate people with our work. And now there's been over 26 cities that have adopted our same initiative. This was me at City Council in Santa Cruz, where we deprioritized in Santa Cruz, as well as Berkeley City Hall, presenting to them around why we should deprioritize sacred plants and fungi. And here's a photo of me and my father after our first ceremony together and sitting in ceremonies 2 years in a row. So my mission is really to transform the way we understand and heal addiction, fostering a non-judgmental and compassionate, empowering approach. And I aim to inspire practitioners and individuals with an ethical framework that supports both safe and intentional use of microdosing and other practices, guiding individuals and clients on a journey to break free of addiction. I think it's important when we talk about addiction to really speak about what are the roots of addiction, because now we know, especially through the Rat Park study, which Lauren talks about in her presentation, is that it's not that these substances are necessarily addictive. It's what leads a person to self-soothe and to begin with. So some of the roots of addiction are environment, culture, society, capitalism that can lead to addiction, trauma, societal, ancestral, emotional, physical, sexual, intergenerational trauma, pain, both emotional pain, physical pain, relational pain, disconnection from soul. I think this is a big one. Individuals just feel so disconnected from their soul, from their spirituality, and addiction. And we just learned about this in the spirituality panel, but oftentimes it's a pursuit of the divine. And I think addiction for me, I was just trying to heal the whole time. I was just trying to soothe myself. I was just looking for that safety blanket to really feel safe and to feel love. And I didn't feel that. And I felt that through substances, and they really helped me feel connected. And I think I was trying to find God the whole time through these substances. Isolation, loneliness, attachment trauma, and wounding are also roots of addiction. The current paradigm of addiction treatment views addiction as a disease, and that a person is going to be an addict for the rest of their lives, and that the only way to treat that addiction is through total abstinence of all drugs. And I'm really here to show a new way and a new perspective. The definition of a disease is that it changes your brain, but so does falling in love, and so does learning a new sport. Psychedelics change your brain, and we're not calling these other things a disease. And I respect anyone that believes that addiction is a disease. For me, believing that I was going to be an addict for the rest of my life, believing that I was told I was powerless, that I had to stay on medications for the rest of my life, and thinking that I was diseased just kept me in a perpetual cycle of addiction. When I finally learned that I was more powerful than my addiction, and I was powerful, and I wasn't going to be a drug addict for the rest of my life, and I didn't have to be on medications for the rest of my life, that's when things really started to shift for me. Believing that addiction is a disease robs a person of their power and blames the addiction on genes rather than seeing addiction as an indication of something deeper. It's also a life sentence. Believing I'm going to be an addict for the rest of my life. And I believe that with psychedelics, we can actually transform out of the identity of addiction. Addiction became an identity for me. I believed that I was an addict. I said, I am an addict in every meeting I went to, and really, operated life through addict consciousness. And with psychedelics, they helped me understand that I was operating from addict consciousness and learn that I'm so much more than my addiction. We are so much more than the drugs that we take, or the beliefs that we have, or the behaviors that we do. And so when we're considering healing addiction, an important place to start is really, I believe the desire for change is more powerful than any addiction. If an individual has that desire to change, they feel that light, that inspiration within them, that's going to be the guiding light that carries them throughout that whole process. And for people that aren't ready to change, I am interested in the role potentially microdosing might have in helping people break out of a pattern to really become more motivated to change. And also, The worst thing is to be addicted and hating the experience of it. And so I always invite people, if you're in active addiction, let's say you're addicted to heroin. Let's start to bring intentionality into the addictive process. Put your heroin on the altar. Say a prayer every time you do, shoot up. And same, with alcohol addiction, with people that I work with, alcoholism. Every time you take a swig of alcohol, say I love you, or think about what you love about yourself. And starting to bring in ritual and reverence and love into active addiction can actually start to heal it. Also, I lied. I lied for many years. I didn't admit that I was addicted to drugs. I hid it. Was just filled with so much shame. And I think it's important, if we're in active addiction, to really become transparent. The more transparent we are and honest we are with ourselves, the more progress we make. And transformation is about facing the truth of who we are while not running away. And we can transform out of the identity of addiction. So as we spoke about in the opening ceremony, targeted abstinence is a term. If you could take away anything from this conference, it's to understand targeted abstinence. And, psychedelics support targeted abstinence, because targeted abstinence basically says you abstain from your drug of choice, your behavior of choice, your thought pattern that you might be addicted to of choice, but you allow for healing processes, beliefs, medicines to be a part of your recovery. And psychedelics support targeted abstinence by providing emotional healing, enhancing self-awareness, interrupting destructive patterns, and helping individuals maintain a flexible yet effective approach to their recovery. They really allows people to address their underlying issues of addiction, while continuously choose which substances to eliminate without the rigid constraints of total abstinence. So the traditional model basically says, of healing addiction says, abstain from all substances and behaviors. But with psychedelics, we're basically targeting our abstinence. So just to give you an example, I abstain from opioids and prescription medications, but I allow for ayahuasca or microdosing LSD to be a part of my recovery process. This actually takes a lot more intentionality and honesty to be able to integrate psychedelics properly into recovery. So, this path is definitely the harder path. It's the more intentional path, and we have to be really mindful about developing a new relationship with these substances as we're integrating them into our addiction recovery process. So what are some of the risks when exploring psychedelics and microdosing to transform addiction? I think it's important to talk about the risks. So some of the risks are replacing one drug with the other, creating dependency on psychedelics. I've definitely seen that, especially with microdosing. People can become dependent on microdosing, or it can lead them to ceremony hopping, where they're just going to ceremony every single weekend, ceremony, 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 without actually integrating. And I even had a client that had 20 years of addiction, and he admitted that he was doing extremely high doses of psychedelics to escape his body, because he didn't want to be in his body. And that was a powerful awareness that he had. So it's just important that we really understand the risks. Also, contraindications. There's a lot of medications that people are taking that are contraindicated or dangerous to combine with certain psychedelics. Viewing psychedelics as a magic bullet, a cure, panacea. I think this is really important to talk about. There's a lot of headlines like Ibogaine, the cure for addiction. And that's dangerous, because first of all, it just looks at only the substance as the cure, when it's really the substance is the key. The individual is the one that's going to be doing that work. These substances are so powerful at interrupting the process of addiction, healing physiological and psychological withdrawals. But it's up to the individual to really do that integration work to evolve the addiction recovery process. Giving all of our power away to psychedelics. The psychedelics are not going to heal your addiction or your client's addiction. The individual heals their addiction. It's up to the individual to do that work. I've seen so many people take psychedelics to break out of addiction, and the risk with that is that oftentimes in the experience or in the integration, all the material that the person was running away from with addiction comes up. And if people don't have that container of support around them, then they can relapse, because they don't feel empowered to be able to walk through that darkness in the integration process. So I think it's so important to have community, to have a guide to work with, to help you process the material, these roots of addiction. using microdosing to numb feelings, not being open for change or being willing to change, individuals that are just not willing to put in any effort, unhoused, unstable, lack of support. Support is so important when we're considering integrating psychedelics into addiction recovery. And someone that's just not ready to do inner work. I think it's so important if you're considering working with people in this intersection to have a very real conversation about, are you willing to put in the work? You know, it's all about the integration work, even when it comes to microdosing or doing larger experiences, and being willing to commit to facing your darkness and being willing to understand that everything that you were running away from or your client was running away from in their addiction will come up in the integration process. And having that informed consent, I think, is really powerful and important. So I could talk for hours and hours and hours about the benefits of microdosing and psychedelics as a tool for addiction interruption and medication tapering, but I'm just going to give some very high level overviews of from the hundreds of people that I've worked with and for myself, these are some of the common themes that I've seen. So psychedelics or microdosing might foster a new perspective on their addiction. It doesn't have to be taken every day or indefinitely, might relieve symptoms of PTSD, even physical pain, mental health conditions that lead to addiction. Oftentimes people get addicted to opioids because they have physical pain, and microdosing is now being researched and looked at as a tool to ease physical pain. Psychedelics can aid in identifying the root cause of suffering, which I think is one of the most powerful aspects of this, is that we're not just healing an addiction to substances or behaviors or thought patterns. We're really getting to the root of what leads someone to self-soothe in the first place. Psychedelics, many psychedelic medicines can be non-addictive and can be considered addiction interrupters. Some of them can be addictive, like ketamine. A lot of people can get addicted. I got addicted to ketamine. I had to use iboga to interrupt addiction to ketamine. So it's, they're not immune from being addictive. It's really about our relationship with them. And I think that's important for us to continue to have these conversations. Psychedelics are an agent for easing drug withdrawal. I believe, and Jim Fadiman also believes this, in the future, microdosing is going to be the gold standard for easing drug withdrawal. It helped me more, as you could see in that video, more than anything else I was doing. It was such a game changer for me. I'm so grateful for microdosing as a tool for easing that withdrawal process. And so that's why I've created my microdosing facilitator training program to really train practitioners how to use microdosing as a tool to ease withdrawal. Introspection instead of escape, psychedelics help us look at ourselves. They help us look at our suffering. They help us, turn our eyes inward. The only way out is in. And I think that's one of the biggest aspects for people that have been running away from themselves for decades, potentially decades. And they also help us be in our bodies after years of disassociation. Addiction was a tool of disassociation. Because of the trauma that I went through, I didn't feel safe in my body. And microdosing has been such a powerful tool to help me learn how to feel safe and feel good to be in my body after years of just wanting to escape my body at all costs. They also help people address suppressed emotions. I think a lot of addiction is, addiction is a tool to suppress emotions, and people are highly suppressed because they don't feel safe to express their emotions. And so psychedelics can start to bring these emotions up in an accessible and healing way for people. Also, developing a new relationship with medicines and substances. I'm going to go into this in my workshop on Monday of how we can really shift our relationship with these substances and away from abusing them into a healing container with them. Creating self-love and trust. Psychedelics help people, oftentimes we say a side effect of microdosing is that you fall back in love with yourself. These medicines can also interrupt cravings. They might balance dopamine levels, which often lead people to relapse or addiction. They can enhance mood and relax anxiety, often a trigger for substance abuse or even, behavioral process addictions. One of the biggest aspects, I believe, is the fact, the research is showing, and even, our research with microdosing, that these medicines can create neuroplasticity in the brain, which can lead to neurogenesis and rewire the brain away from addictive patterns. They might soothe pain and discomfort and withdrawal and provide connection and security with oneself and spirit. If I was to crystallize everything into one big takeaway from, I've done ayahuasca over 100 times and worked diligently with these entheogens, and entheogen means to discover and evoke the divine from within. If I was to crystallize it down, I think this term, specifically entheogen, is why psychedelics are so healing for addiction, because oftentimes people that are healing addiction look outside of themselves for the answer, whether it's the next drug, the next doctor, the next rehab. And entheogens teach us that we are a fractal of the divine, that we determine our own destiny. And people that are going through addiction, at least for myself, I was trying to fill a void. And what I've realized, it was the void of God, the void of my spiritual connection, the void of my connection with myself and my own divinity and my own power. And healing addiction is really reconnecting with that power and that spiritual self. And that ultimately the void was an illusion. And in this polar reality that we're in, sometimes we have to forget in order to remember. And the remembrance that I want to evoke today is, we are the ones we've been waiting for. If you're struggling with addiction, you are the answer. You're so powerful. You're the one. You're the one that's going to heal your life. And it's just so empowering that we're it. We're the answer. All the answers live within us, and psychedelics can be, the tool to helping us continue to unlock our own power. This is a photo of me going through withdrawal. As I mentioned before, I was deep in withdrawal for over 18 months. And I'm actually so grateful for the withdrawal. The withdrawal was such medicine for me. And like I say now, honor the withdrawal, the medicine of the withdrawal. Psychedelics taught me that the withdrawal is the medicine for sustaining long-term change. I'm so grateful that I went through the withdrawal because I never want to go back to who I was before. To me, it's not about recovering who I used to be. It's about creating a whole new being and transforming out of that. And because I suffered so much with the withdrawal, it's the biggest harm reduction tool. And I never want to go back on those drugs because I never want to go through that again. It was hell. And I've talked to a lot of Ibogaine practitioners and Iboga practitioners about this because sometimes that medicine, people don't go through such intense withdrawals with that medicine. Sometimes they do, but they forget, they forget the impacts that drug has. And so withdrawal is just so important. I think withdrawal is beautiful. It shows us how deeply the drug impacted our physiology. And the depth of the withdrawal can actually be a relapse prevention tool. And so if you're working with anyone in addiction recovery, or even if you're going through it yourself, remember the withdrawal. Use the withdrawal as a reference point. And if your client thinks about using again, you can come back to the withdrawal as an important point to help people remember that they don't want to keep going through that suffering. And as I mentioned before, addiction is a deeply ingrained neural pathway. If we do something over and over and over again, the same drug, the same behavior, the same thought pattern, we're going to create a deeply ingrained neural pathway. And psychedelics, we can look at the neural pathway as like a bunny slope of if you're skiing. Psychedelics put that fresh snow. But psychedelics are also the neuroplasticity is inherently neutral. So you can positively influence it or negatively influence it. And the research shows that it's neutral. So, just to give an example, drugs like methamphetamine are actually neuroplastic. So it's really about we decide the new neural pathways that we're going to ingrain deeply. That's why the integration is so important. These medicines can open up the flexibility in the brain. They can make us more fluid and more flexible, but it's up to us to actually create positive neural pathways and create new ones to break free of both addictive behaviors and the beliefs and identities associated with addiction. I want to say that not everyone survives addiction. I've lost dozens of friends from addiction. It's not always a gift. For me, because I've been able to do so much healing work with my addiction, it's become a teacher, a guide, and ultimately a gift. The gift is that I get to be here with you all. I get to help thousands of people around the world heal from addiction. I'm so grateful for my addiction. It's been my gift to the world. But not everyone has that experience. A lot of people die from addiction. And I just, want to honor all the lives that have been lost. And it's not always a gift to families. Oftentimes, addiction can wreak havoc on families. And people are so deeply impacted by the lying and the deceit and the manipulation that addiction can have. So there's definitely a lot of shadow aspects for addiction. But I also think it's important. I feel like so much of our paradigm of viewing addiction is focused so much on the shadow of how bad addiction is and how much it impacts people and just all the shadow darkness of it, which is important. But I think it's also important that we talk about the light aspect of addiction. Addiction is a learned behavior that can be evolved and it can be overcome. For me, my addiction actually saved my life. When I look back on it, I was so suicidally depressed every single day. I attempted suicide when I was younger. And, I think addiction actually saved my life because it helped me find some type of temporary safety and an emotional state of mind that was so unsafe. I just hated being alive, and addiction made my life more tolerable. I remember saying that it just helps me feel more normal. I remember the first time I felt opioids, I was like, oh my gosh, I can live in the world now. I feel safe. I feel comfort. So they saved my life until they hurt my life, and so it was a lifesaver for a certain amount of time. And, addiction is happening for you, not against you. I think the darkness we go through in our lives is our spiritual training program. I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do now had I not gone through 15 years of drug addiction. It's not something that you can research about or study necessarily. You really have to have that lived experience to understand it as a spiritual training program in that way. It was also a self-soothing and a coping tool. Healing addiction can lead people to their purpose on this planet to help other people heal from addiction. And I think that's one of the ingredients that can be so powerful at healing layers of addiction is being of service, giving back. That's why we have our recovery program. People get to facilitate groups and be of service and give back. I think it's also about giving back to these medicines. How do we approach psychedelics as a tool of, not coming at them from this framework of what can I get from this? Or is this medicine going to heal me or take my addiction away? It's, viewing it through a decolonized lens of how can I give and receive to this relationship? And this conference is part of giving back to the medicines for how much they've helped us so that we share the message. I feel the medicine channeling through me and speaking through me, and I get to share that with you all. And we all get to be advocates and channels for these medicines by sharing our stories and being of service to other people. Overcoming addiction can bring us to the happiest, healthiest versions of ourselves. Another thing I want to share about is that relapse is like a rubber band. Sometimes relapse is important for people. People do die when they relapse. But for people that survive relapse, sometimes relapse is important because people are just not done yet. Sometimes people go back to their drug of choice, behavior of choice, thought pattern of choice, because they have more spiritual learning to do. And sometimes relapse can be taking steps back in order to gain momentum to go forward. Relapse can be a gift in the process of addiction. It's not always. Like I said, a lot of people can die from relapse, but I want to just, psychedelics help teach me that we can view relapse as medicine as well. It can provide an individual with new information about themselves. You didn't lose your clean time because you're using drugs doesn't make you dirty. Sometimes I remember I felt so much shame in the past from relapse, as if I fucked up or as if I lost all my time that I had put into myself. And I think it's important to not view relapse in that way. It's an important process in moving the needle of progression. And it can give individual the opportunity to fuel more reasons why they want to release the addiction or motivate change. It can also, it can remind people of why they want to heal. And it's a part of a process. Healing addiction is not linear, it's a spiral. And sometimes an individual might need to go back to their addiction to understand why they want to move forward. So I just want to share a bit. As I come to a close, I want to share a bit about our program, Psychedelic Recovery. Psychedelicrecovery.org is our support program. Thank you so much to all of our amazing facilitators who've facilitated these groups. We have a training program where we train people how to facilitate our recovery program. Over 5,000 people worldwide have come through our program. It's a peer support group that happens 8 times a month online, and we provide education, community, long-term integration and support. Our goal is to shift the paradigm around how we understand and heal addiction. We provide long-term integration support and meaning making for people that are using psychedelics to heal from addiction. Our groups have saved numerous lives. So many people have told us, like, I'm so grateful for your group. It helped save my life. People have come back for years and years and years to these groups. It's a harm reduction group. We're not a 12-step group. We advocate for a structured way to use these medicines and combined with professionalism and support. And we practice targeted abstinence. If you're interested in getting involved either as a facilitator, we are looking for new facilitators of this program. And if you know anyone that could benefit from this group, it's free to join. So please, share this resource. And we really think, we can't use psychedelics in isolation to heal addiction. Community is so important and necessary to be supported in community with other people who get it, who've been through this process as well. So you can find us at psychedelicrecovery.org. And I also offer microdosing coaching, recovery coaching. You can connect with me at connect@lumerianow.com. My Instagram is connect with D and Psychedelic Society SF. And I'm also going to be opening up my training program to train practitioners, my microdosing facilitator training, which starts in January 2026. I have over 20 of the world's leading experts that are training our program, and I've developed this program in collaboration with Dr. Jim Fadiman, the founder and inventor of microdosing. So if you're interested in becoming trained, I'll send out more information about that. Thank you so much for receiving my presentation today, for your openness and receiving my perspective. And I really appreciate you all so much for being here for this presentation. I would love to open it up for any questions that anyone has. If you guys want to put them in the chat, please let me know. And Sarah asked, do you have to be a practitioner to join your training? You do not. The training is open to both people that are brand new to being practitioners, as well as clinicians and people that are practitioners. But we've had a lot of people that are, yoga teachers or people that have no coaching experience at all. We welcome people that are brand new to becoming practitioners to really become trained in this modality. Are you working to expand into other states? Yes, we are available in all states across the United States. We even have people from Europe. I've had people from the Netherlands and from the UK join our program. So our program is open to people from all over the world. Thanks for asking. How is the training different from the course on Monday? That's a great question, Dana. So the workshop on Monday that I'm teaching is about microdosing for addiction recovery. And that is just a very high level overview of teaching how microdosing is effective for addiction recovery. I'm going to introduce some tools and tricks and frameworks that I'll be teaching about in that microdosing workshop. It's very high level information. Some of that information I also teach about in my training program. The training program, the microdosing facilitator training, which is a different program from the workshop on Monday, that is a 3-month program with 20 of the world's leading experts teaching all different types of classes, from the neurobiology to the science to integrating psychedelics into medication withdrawal. We have scientists, we have researchers, clinicians, so many different teachers that teach all these different practices. We also teach all about intake forms and the process of actually facilitating these sessions. And you break out into breakout groups, and you get to actually practice these facilitation techniques. You get to learn from so many different experts in the field. It's a very comprehensive program, and at the end you get a certification. So it's very, very comprehensive. And I'll send out more information about the training. I don't really want to go into the cost in this session, but yeah, I'll share more. I'll send an email out to you guys. Can you provide info on the process you completed to promote decriminalization? Thank you so much for asking, Melissa. The best resource for that is decriminalizenature.org. Decriminalize Nature, I'll put that in the chat. Decriminalize Nature is the organization that I was a part of on the founding team, and they've developed a whole training. They've trained so many different cities across the United States of how to implement the initiative at the local level, and they work closely with every single city. They're amazing. My friend Larry's the head of that. My friend Reggie's on the board, and they do such amazing work. So if you're interested in deprioritizing at the local level and your jurisdiction, I highly recommend that you connect with Decriminalize Nature and let them know I sent you. And if you need a personal intro to them, you can email me at connect@lumerianow.com. I'll put my email in the chat. I'm happy to make an intro. My mom said, "Wow, Danielle, even as your mother, I've learned even more about your healing process. Your video was extraordinary. It brought back so many difficult memories, and it's an honor to witness your progress and how you're now a guiding light and how to integrate these plant medicines into your life to live more fully with presence and contentment." Thank you so much, Mom. I really appreciate you saying that. And it's really an honor to have you here and to have you witness my presentation and my process. I've never shared that video with my mom. This is the first time she's seen me share publicly about my story. So it really means a lot to have you here, Mom. Thank you. Question. Any questions? A couple links again, of those links again, please. Absolutely. I put the link to that video in the chat. I put my email in the chat and then psychedelicrecovery.org. Are there any questions from anyone here? Anything I can answer now that we have 5 more minutes together? I'll just read some things in the chat. Moondragon asked, "What was it like making videos, envisioning what you would do with them?" It's such a great question. I was a part of these support groups online for people that were using benzodiazepines, that were recovering from benzodiazepine withdrawal, and they would make all these videos and just share about their process with other people. And it was so hard for me to make the videos. I felt so much resistance to that. I did feel that there was something inside of me that knew I was going to share them someday, and I felt like it was important to document my experience. And so, yeah, I knew that I wanted to help people. I suffered for months and months and months and months and months, over 18 months in this withdrawal process, and I just knew there was a reason why I was going through that, because I wanted to share and help other people. And so I'm so glad I documented. I wish I documented more of my process, but I'm really glad that I did document that. And hopefully it's a resource and can inspire other people to be able to heal as well. Is MDMA helpful in a microdose? MDMA is not helpful in a microdose. From what we understand right now, we advise against microdosing with MDMA because it has higher abuse potential and higher potential for toxicity in terms of microdosing. There are some companies that do have MDMA microdoses, but under the training of Dr. Jim Fadiman, we highly advise against microdosing with MDMA. We're really at the infancy phase of our research with microdosing and understanding safety and efficacy. So right now we're only really focusing on certain substances like psilocybin-containing mushrooms, LSD, wachuma, Amanita muscaria, ayahuasca, iboga, even 5-MeO-DMT as potential tools for microdosing. But we do definitely advise against MDMA microdosing oftentimes as well. Some people do have negative effects because MDMA does have a threshold dose of 80 milligrams. So taking less than that, some people can have a lot of discomfort, and just highly against advising against MDMA microdosing. Thanks so much for your question. Any other questions? I see Seth says the space between ceremonies, the continuation of interruption is one of the most powerful medicines. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Seth. Melissa says, I healed my chronic pain condition with psychedelics. That's huge. I'm so grateful to hear that. That's amazing. I pray that you're sharing your story with other people so that they can learn about that. I want to hear more about that, actually. Please send me an email about your story. Sarah says, you're an incredible human. Thank you for all you do. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you. Moondragon asks, what was your first psychedelic aha moment? I think my first psychedelic aha moment was when I was 16 years old and I took MDMA, and I felt so connected to unity consciousness, to God, to community. I was really deep in the rave scene and taking MDMA in high school when I was a teenager. And I felt so connected to humanity and each other and to myself for the first time ever. And I think my first psychedelic aha moment for healing addiction, fast forward, my first ayahuasca ceremony was just purging in ceremony, purging. And I was tasting the drugs coming out of me. I know it's like vulgar to say that, but honestly, psychedelics were so helpful at healing my addiction because I was physically purging. And she just said, I'm going to show you a new way. I felt so much better after my first ayahuasca ceremony. And I felt for the first time in my life that I was going to be able to be free of addiction. And I think the physiological purging and letting go was so helpful because sometimes we can't mentally let go. Sometimes we need to physiologically let go. Sometimes trauma is stored in the body and energetics. The detox potential of psychedelics is so incredibly helpful. And then with microdosing, the aha moment for me in those videos that you saw, I had days where I couldn't leave my apartment. I was so agoraphobic and scared. Agoraphobia basically means you have fear of being in outside spaces. I remember going into a grocery store and just panicking and leaving. I couldn't even be inside. I was so scared. And psychedelics, and specifically microdosing, helped me leave my apartment and go into a grocery store, and just basic things that we take for granted as healthy individuals, and in feeling the physiological withdrawals, have some relief from the microdosing was such a game changer. Rolando asks, is there any research on low-dose DMT and tapering? I've witnessed some amazing experiences on depression with addiction. No, I don't know of any research, but it's such a great question, Rolando. I highly recommend that you start documenting your process with this because, Dr. James Fadiman, my best friend and mentor, all of his research has been done by him doing that research. He's actually, been researching microdosing because people have sending him experience reports for decades. And that's also a way to do citizen science research. So I definitely encourage, for you to start to do that research in that specific area, Rolando. I love that. That's so amazing. Well, thank you all so much. And also there's, Dr. Connor Murray, one of my collaborators. He also has these headsets, these EEG headsets. We organized one of the first research studies this year where we did a retreat in Santa Cruz where we compared two different varieties of microdosing psilocybin-containing mushrooms on the human brain. We had over 75 people in our research study, and we used these EEG headsets to scan the brains. And so you can actually buy these EEG headsets and start to do research at home. And you can send me an email, connect@lumerianow.com, if you're interested in learning more about that. But I just want to empower all of you. You know, we are the next phase. We are the paradigm shifters. We are the shift that we've been waiting for. Keep sharing your story. Thank you so much for who you are, for your soul. Thank you for all the work that you've done on yourself. If you're working with people, thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. I really appreciate all of you just for the guiding light, the powerful souls that you are, to be on this journey together, inviting you all to reach out to me if you're looking for training, for support, for collaboration. I'm your ally. I'm so available for all of you. Thank you to Anna Simons for being here, for the Etheridge Foundation, for being the presenting sponsor of this conference, and for all of your support. We could not have done this conference without you, and we could not have done this conference without all of you being here and supporting us. So thank you for supporting us. Keep sharing the conference with your friends and family and community. I'm so excited because our next presentation is the one I've been waiting for years. Anna and I have been working on this conference for years. We're going to hear from Melissa Etheridge, Grammy award-winning singer and artist, who's going to give a presentation for us. And then I get the opportunity to interview Anna Simons, who is the executive director of the Etheridge Foundation. We're going to talk all about Anna's story, hear her powerful perspective, both from a spiritual lens and as a family member of a family that's been deeply impacted by addiction. And we'll also get to learn about the groundbreaking work that the Etheridge Foundation is doing as one of the leading organizations that's funding so many of the research studies. Thank you to the Etheridge Foundation for all the important work that you're doing in advancing these psychedelic treatments for treating addiction. And thank you all so much for being here for this presentation. And we look forward to seeing you at the next session.